Hi everyone, and welcome to our presentation on the major theories of personality. Have you ever wondered why people behave the way they do? What shapes who we are? These are all kinds of questions that personality psychology tries to answer. Understanding these theories isn't just for psychologists, it helps us understand ourselves and the people around us.
In this video, we'll be exploring the foundations of personality psychology through three groundbreaking theories: Sigmund Freud's psychoanalytic theory, Alfred Adler's individual psychology, and Carl Jung's analytical psychology. We'll look at their core ideas, contributions, and how they compare to each other. By the end, we hope you'll have a new appreciation for the complex puzzle that is human personality.
Let's begin with the man who started it all. Sigmund Freud. Freud's psychoanalytic theory fundamentally changed how we think about the human mind, introducing the idea that our personality is shaped by unconscious drives and early childhood experiences. He proposed a three-part structure of the mind: the id, the ego, and the superego. The id is the most primitive part. Driven by the pleasure principle, it wants immediate gratification for all our needs and desires. The superego is the more moral compass, internalized from our parents and society. It strives for perfection and judges our actions. Caught in the middle is the ego, which operates on the reality principle. Its job is to balance the desires of the id and the judgment of the superego in a realistic way. Freud also believed that we go through psychosexual stages of development that impact our personality as adults. If a conflict isn't resolved at a particular stage, it can lead to a fixation. To manage the constant conflict between the id and the superego, the ego uses what Freud called defense mechanism. These are unconscious strategies that protect us from anxiety. A common example is repression, where we unconsciously push distressing through our memories out of our awareness. For example, a person who experienced a traumatic event as a child might have no conscious memory of it as an adult. Another is displacement, which is when we redirect an impulse like anger from the source of the frustration to a less threatening target. For instance, getting mad at your boss but then going home and yelling at your family instead. Building upon Freud's ideas, Alfred Adler presented a different perspective with his individual psychology. Adler's theory moved away from Freud's emphasis on sexual drives and instead focused on the universal human need to overcome feelings of inferiority and strive for superiority. Some of his core concepts include fictional finalism, which is the idea that our personality is guided by a subjective future goal, even if it is an unconscious one. He also introduced the style of life, which is our unique way of pursuing that goal, and the family constellation, which refers to our position in the family, like being the oldest or youngest child and how it influenced our personality. He also highlighted the creative power of the self, emphasizing that we have the ability to shape our own personalities. Like Freud, Adler also discussed psychological defense, which he called safeguarding tendencies. And an example of this is excuses, where a person uses a yes but or if only excuse to protect a fragile sense of self-worth from public discredit. For example, a student might say, I would have gotten an A on that test, but I was sick that week. Another is aggression, where someone uses depreciation, accusation, or self-accusation to protect their exaggerated feelings of superiority. Compared to Freud's theory, Adler is much more optimistic. While Freud saw people as being driven by a past ruled by unconscious forces, Adler saw us striving for a future and having the free will to shape our own lives. Other important defense mechanisms include denial, where a person refuses to accept reality because it's too painful. Projection, where we see our own unwanted feelings in others. And regression, returning to a childlike behavior when stressed. Rationalization, giving logical but false explanation for behavior. Reaction formation, expressing the opposite of what we actually feel. Sublimation, channeling unacceptable urge into social acceptable activities such as turning aggression into competitive sports or art. Freud's theories have been both influential and controversial. While some of his ideas, like the heavy focus on sexuality, are less accepted today, his concepts of the unconscious mind, childhood experiences, and defense mechanisms still shape modern psychology. Psychotherapy and even popular culture, his work paved the way for later theories such as those of Carl Jung, Alfred Adler, and Erik Erikson, who expanded and modified Freud's original ideas. Although Freud's theory has been criticized for being unscientific, overly focused on sexuality, and based on limited case studies, his contributions cannot be denied. He introduced the importance of the unconscious mind, the role of childhood experiences, and the idea that human behavior is often driven by hidden motives. Many modern therapies, such as psychodynamic therapy, are rooted in his work. Moreover, Freud influenced other major theorists who built on or challenged his ideas. For example, Carl Jung introduced the concept of the collective unconscious. Alfred Adler emphasized social factors and striving for superiority, and Erik Erikson developed psychosocial stages of development that extend throughout the lifespan. In short, Freud's psychoanalytic theory laid the foundation for modern psychology, even if some of his ideas are debated today. His work opened the door to exploring the deep and complex nature of the human mind.
While Adler moved away from Freud's focus on drives, Carl Jung took a different path. He agreed with Freud on the power of the unconscious, but he expanded it in a revolutionary way. Where Freud's unconscious was personal, Jung's was collective. Now, let's explore Carl Jung's analytical psychology. Jung initially worked with Freud but later developed his own theory that expanded the concept of the unconscious. Jung's most famous and revolutionary concept is the collective unconscious, which he believed was a shared inherited set of memories and ideas that all humans carry. This is why similar themes, symbols, and myths appear across different cultures and throughout history. Within his collective unconscious are archetypes, which are universal, archaic patterns of thought and images. Think of archetypes as blueprints for human experience. Some well-known examples include the hero, a figure who overcomes challenges and saves the day, found in stories from ancient epics to modern movies. The shadow, which represents the dark, repressed, and primitive side of our personality that we don't want to admit we have. The persona, which is the social mask we wear in public, the version of ourselves we present to the world. The anima and animus, representing the unconscious, feminine qualities in men and masculine qualities in women. And finally, the self, the ultimate archetype that represents the striving for wholeness and integration of all parts of our personality. Jung also presented the psychological types and function. He categorized people as either introverts or extroverts, based on whether their psychic energy is directed inward or outward. An introvert might recharge by spending time alone, while an extrovert gets their energy from social interaction. Within those types, he identified four functions of the mind: thinking, feeling, sensing, and intuiting. Thinking and feeling are rational functions. They help us make judgments and decisions. A thinking person bases their decisions on logic and objective facts, while a feeling person bases them on personal values and emotions. Sensing and intuiting are irrational functions. They help us perceive information. A sensing person relies on their five senses and trusts concrete facts, while an intuiting person looks for patterns and possibilities beyond what is immediately obvious. Jung believed that while we use all these functions, we tend to have a dominant one. For example, a person might be a thinking extrovert who is logical and outgoing. In comparing Jung's theory to Freud's, we see some key differences. While both believed in the power of the unconscious, Jung's was much broader. Freud's unconscious was personal and rooted in individual experience, whereas Jung's included a universal inherited component, the collective unconscious. Jung also placed less emphasis on sexual drives as the primary motivator and focused more on a person's drive towards self-realization and wholeness. He saw us being pulled forward by future goals, not just pushed by past experiences. To wrap things up, we've explored three incredible theories of personality. Freud gave us the idea of an unconscious mind driven by our ego and superego. Adler provided a more optimistic view, suggesting we are motivated by a drive for superiority and a unique style of life. And Jung expanded the unconscious to a shared collective level filled with universal archetypes. So, how can we apply these theories in the real world? In therapy, a professional might use Freudian analysis to help a client uncover a repressed memory that is affecting their present behavior. A therapist using Adler's approach might look at a client's birth order to understand their social dynamics or help them identify their fictional final goal. Jung's work, on the other hand, can be used in personal development to help us recognize our own shadow or persona and work towards a more integrated and authentic self. These theories provide valuable frameworks for understanding what makes each of us unique and how our past and future goals shape who we are today. Thank you for watching.